This video is made possible by 28mobile.com.
Hey guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a look at the new Galaxy Note 4, the flagship phone for Samsung in 2014 and perhaps the most anticipated device this year. So the Galaxy Note 4 is the same size, 5.7-inch display as the Note 3, but this time we have a Quad HD display with a resolution of 1440 by 2560 instead of the 1080p from last year. So that gives us a pixel density of 515 ppi. So that's a huge leap from the 386 ppi from last year. This is also using that Super AMOLED technology, which is new and improved for the new Note 4. In fact, DisplayMate declares that this is the best display on any mobile phone today, even beating the iPhone 6 Plus, so I'm really looking forward to taking a look at that display. Now, of course, we have bumped up specs across the board with a new 16 megapixel camera on the back with optical image stabilization and 4K video recording. That's an improvement over the 13 megapixel from last year. We also have a new front-facing camera good for 3.7 megapixels instead of 2 megapixels. We also have new processors, and once again, there are two versions of this phone, one with a Snapdragon, one with an Exynos. The Snapdragon is the 805 clocked at 2.7 gigahertz with an Adreno 420 GPU. We also have the Exynos 5433 processor, which means we have two quad cores. One quad core is 1.3 gigahertz Cortex A53. The other is the 1.9 gigahertz Cortex A57. Now, once again, we have 3 gigs of RAM with 32 gigs of internal storage standard, plus a micro SD card slot that can go up to 128 gigs. Now, this does not have an IP certification rating, so it's not declared water resistant like the Galaxy S5 or some other Samsung devices recently. Now, they've also added a heart rate monitor and a fingerprint sensor built into the home button. We also have a new and improved S Pen with twice the sensitivity levels of the Note 3. Now, the battery capacity has been bumped up by 20 milliamp hours from the 3200 from last year's Note 3. Now, the other big story with the Note 4 is Samsung's new premium design language. So we go from an all-plastic construction with kind of faux chrome finishes to a metal construction. So we have a nice metal bezel surrounding the phone. Now, the back panel is still plastic. It does have that full leather finish, but they've just eliminated the stitching. Now, the front panel is kind of different as well. We have a curved glass edge, which provides a nice smooth surface to rub your finger across. So it's picking up on a trend we've seen lately with other phones like the Moto X and the iPhone 6. Alright, so let's go and crack into my example of the Galaxy Note 4. As you can see, Samsung has updated the packaging. We saw this first with the Galaxy Alpha, so it's a little more premium looking than the faux wood grain we saw with previous packaging. It's still environmentally friendly, of course. So let's go ahead and crack the tabs along the side. Alright, so let's go ahead and crack into this box, and inside is the new Galaxy Note 4 in Frost White. This is also available in black, gold, and pink. So yeah, some color options here. So let's go ahead and pull this out. Obviously, you can see all the features highlighted on the front plastic here. On the back, we have more plastic, so let's go ahead and start peeling this off. That's one. Let's get to the other one here. There we go. So there we go, 5.7-inch display. Feels really nice in the hand already when you touch the metal sides. Very different experience from the plastic phone we're used to. So again, very interesting. It looks very familiar. It looks like a lot of other Samsung devices, but the differences are in the details. We also have a little protector covering our camera lens here, and that's it. There is no little strips of plastic along the side. Now, of course, we're going to need to find our battery, so let's get through all of the accessories. And they're not just run-of-the-mill accessories, and I'll explain in just a moment here. So you can see we have our paperwork kind of nicely tied together here. So I guess we have some forms which are unique to the Hong Kong market or Asian market here. You can see our quick start guide. Of course, we're going to go through all of this in this video. And then we have our safety warranty information, again, in a language I don't understand. So let's get to the stuff I do understand, which includes a micro USB charging cable, a standard white micro USB charging cable. But there's one other trick here, and that is with this charger. So although this is a UK wall adapter, all versions shipped with this phone will be 9-volt fast chargers. So we have adaptive fast charging, as you can see with the label along the side. Now, Samsung claims that this will charge your phone 30% faster than a traditional wall adapter. Now, inside we'll find our standard Samsung in-ear headphones with a remote control and microphone, as well as replacement ear tips to find the right fit. Now, over time with heavy use, S Pen tips will wear out, so they do give you these replacement tips along with a tool to install them. And last but not least is our 3220 milliamp hour battery with the NFC radio built right in. Now let's go ahead and install that battery. Just have to pry off the back panel. So once again, pretty standard stuff for Samsung. We have a little shield here, but the NFC radio is built into the battery, so nothing's built into the back cover. Now, because this is not water resistant, you don't have a gasket surrounding the cover like you would with the GS5. All right, so let's go ahead and slip in our battery here. It pops right in. So down here, you can see we have our loudspeaker. Up here you can see we have a micro SIM tray, not a nano SIM like you find in the Galaxy Alphas. And then we have a micro SD card slot, which supports 128 gig cards. All right, so let's go ahead and snap on our back cover and get this started. All right, so let's take a look at the new Note 4 design. And as you can see next to the Note 3, it is a bit taller than the Note 3, even though they have the same display, 5.7 inches. Of course, much higher resolution on the Note 4. Now, it is thinner and noticeably lighter than the Note 3. That's the first thing I notice here is just how much heavier the Note 3 feels compared to the Note 4. So at the top, we'll find that new 3.7 megapixel front-facing camera, good for 1080p at 30 frames per second, along with all of our sensors, an ambient light sensor, proximity sensor, and an adaptive display sensor. We also have our earpiece, which also picks up on the accent colors around the edges of the phone. So you'll see that white surface along with that kind of polished chamfered edge around it. So little details here and there. And then, of course, we have an LED notification light in the upper left corner. Now, if you look at that camera, you can see just how much bigger the optics are compared to the Note 3. At the bottom, we'll find the home button, which integrates the fingerprint scanner along with our off-screen capacitive Android key. So we have back, and instead of options, we now have a recent apps button, which is, of course, picked up from other Samsung devices launched this year. Of course, you can also just tap and hold the recent apps button to get to options. So on the back, we'll find that new 16 megapixel rear-facing camera, good for 4K video recording with optical image stabilization, so even 4K is stabilized. We also have our heart rate monitor right below that, right next to the single LED flash. Now, the loudspeaker has returned to the back of the phone. This used to be on the side of the Note 3. This is also on the side of the Galaxy Alpha, so I'm a little surprised to see it back here on the back. Of course, with a back-facing speaker, you have a little bump out here to prevent you from muffling the speaker when you lay it flat on a table. Now, this opening is pretty small relative to the size of the speaker behind the back panel, so that's kind of interesting. So at the top of the phone, you'll find the headphone jack, one of the microphones, and of course an IR LED blaster for controlling your AV equipment, and the software is included. Now along the right edge, you'll find the sleep wake power on and off button. As you can see here, the buttons also pick up on the design motif of the bezel with the chamfered edge along with the painted surface. Now along the left-hand edge, we'll find our metal volume rocker, very similar to the Galaxy Alpha, very thin but very tactile and easy to operate. So on the bottom, you can see we've traded a USB 3.0 port for a micro USB port with fast charging. We also have those dual microphones on the bottom as opposed to the single one down here. You can also see that that speaker has been repositioned from the side to the back. And then, of course, we have the S Pen in the same position. This time, the cap of the S Pen is the same color as the body of the S Pen, so nice details here. But otherwise, the design is very similar. So, of course, when you take out the S Pen here, you can see it neatly tucks into that silo. Now, the design of the Note 4 S Pen is very similar to the Note 3. It's the same length, the button's in the same position. Now, the only real difference with the Note 4 S Pen is that it's ribbed, possibly for better gripability than before. So very similar to the Galaxy Alpha, we have this nice polished metal chamfered edge along with the recessed areas on either side of the phone, which is where all the buttons are. So it's a kind of a nicer, narrower grip on the sides of the phone. You can also see that with the Note series, the edges of the phone are painted. Now, I'm not a big fan of this. I'm afraid that it will chip off. And basically it just hides the nice raw metal, which I would prefer to see like you see with the Galaxy Alpha. So I'm not sure why they painted it like this. It's definitely not something I prefer personally, but it does provide some more visual detail. Now, some people have complained that there is a visible gap between the glass panel and the metal frame. This is being dubbed gap gate, and that means that you can stick things in here, and some people are worried that dust, dirt, or water could easily get in between the phone. But Samsung has told people that this is part of the design. Now, on my phone, I notice there's a larger gap on the upper right side and lower left side, as if the glass is just slightly tilted or angled a bit. So there may be some variations in this gap depending on the assembly. All right, so let's take a look at the user interface starting with the lock screen. Now, we're running Android 4.4.4, the latest version at the time of filming, with an updated version of TouchWiz. So you can quickly launch into the camera app right from the lock screen. You can also see on the lock screen, they're feeding some information here like your pedometer and the current weather conditions. Now, this is adjustable under your settings, and we'll get to that at some point in this video. You can see we can swipe down to see our notifications, and you can use a two-finger gesture to see all of your quick settings. Of course, you can also see your quick settings are arranged in a row up top here with access to your brightness slider. You can also select auto and that sort of thing. So let's get to the home screen. So on the home screen, you can see that we can swipe through our available home pages. We can pinch in and out to see all of the home pages and select the preferred home page by selecting the home icon at the top. You can also remove pages. So if we add a new page here, if we tap and hold on to it, take it up to remove, deletes it. You can also add your widgets from here as well. You can see the system moves really quickly. You can also see we have our home screen settings. Now we have something called Flipboard Briefing, which you can toggle off as well as change your transition effects for the home screens. Now what is Flipboard Briefing? So Flipboard Briefing replaces My Magazine. It was always powered by Flipboard. Now Flipboard pretty much has taken over this. So you can see that the feed is again much simpler looking, better looking, a little smoother and more dynamic. But basically this feeds all the latest news stories into your feeds. Now you can also log in with your Flipboard account to update your feeds here. And if you swipe all the way to the bottom, you can modify what feeds into here as well. So you can select the categories you might want. You can swipe back up here to get to them. So for example, if I see a story here that I like on technology, brings up the display and I can basically swipe through it like I would a magazine. Now taking a look at our Android keys, of course we have the home button with the fingerprint scanner, and we have our recent apps key instead of the menu key, and of course the back key. Now the recent apps is redesigned here, so you can see the interface is quite a bit different with this sort of stacked card view, but it works pretty much the same. So you can tap on the page to bring it back up. If you get back here, you can swipe them to close them and that sort of thing. So it's kind of nice, a little smoother, a little more graphically interesting. And then, of course, you can close them all, or you can jump to your active applications to manage your applications, so you can force them all to close. You can see how much RAM you're using. Now, Samsung has also updated S Voice. So if you double tap the home button, what's the weather like tomorrow in Rochester Hills?
On Friday, we'll have some sunshine with a few clouds.
So you can see the S Voice interface now pops up above whatever you're doing and then disappears automatically. And if you want to go to full screen mode, just tap that, takes you back to full screen. And of course, if you just want Google Now, just tap and hold this button. Okay, Google, what's the weather like tomorrow in Rochester Hills?
Tomorrow's forecast for Rochester Hills is 57 degrees and partly cloudy.
Now, alternatively, you could also say, hi Galaxy, show me the nearest gas station.
Here's a list of places I found.
This can also be done from the lock screen. Hi Galaxy, show me the weather for Friday.
The sun will be in and out on Friday.
Now the Recent Apps button also acts as your settings button. Just tap and hold on it and it brings up whatever is contextually relevant to what you're doing. So for example, on the home screen, it brings up my home screen editor. But if I'm in a browser here, it does the same for the browser. Now if you tap and hold the power button along the side, you get some options here. So power off, airplane mode, restart, emergency mode, and of course you have your mute and silencing options here as well. And we also have lots of options with volume control. So if you hit the volume button, you get to all of these available controls. So you can independently control ringtone, media, notifications, and the system volume. Now there is a lot to talk about with that S Pen. So as soon as you remove it from the silo, this Air Command utility pops up right away. If you tap anywhere on the screen, it goes away. If you want to re-invoke it, just tap the button along the side within hovering distance of the screen and it comes back. Now this S Pen can be used for all parts of navigation, even the off-screen Android keys. Now you can hover the tip of the pen over the screen and you get this little cursor here. So if you wave it over something like the tabs up here, you can see that I have 9 open tabs. I can see that this is more options. I can see that this is home, and this works across many apps. Now when I hover it over a text box up here, you can see I can actually input text by tapping up here, and I can handwrite it in or edit with my S Pen. So for example, I can hit this back button and just write in CNN.com. Sees it right away, and we can go ahead and launch it. Now you can just hover the tip of the pen over photo galleries, for example, to expand them out so you can see them, and then you can tap on the image you want to view it. And again, just wave the tip of your pen over any of these icons to find out what they are. Now this S Pen is also great for dragging and dropping to select text, certainly much better than using your fingers and a lot more precise. Alright, so let's take a look at Air Command, starting with Action Memo. So this brings up a note app and you can start writing information down. So for example, if you start writing a number down, that's pretty sloppy here, but if you take this little action icon up here, so I have several options here. So I can create a new contact based on this, and it wants to select which account I want to use here. So you can see it's identified the phone number here and started filling it out for me. So in theory, I could jump back here and start writing in more information. So for example, if I start writing in my name, and now select the action icon here, let's go to create a new contact. It sees my name and my number, works pretty well. Of course, I could also do a website here, theverge.com. See how that works. So I can go to a link here, theverge.com, got it right away. Now let's take a look at Smart Select, which is really interesting here. So basically you just draw a box over anything on the screen and it will provide this little image clip as well as identify the information in that image. So it can see the text here. And so for example, it sees the date and time and you have the option to add an event to your calendar, or see the location so you can see it on the map and that sort of thing. So you see all the information kind of lined up for you. Now you can also just add this into your clip box here. So go ahead and collect it. And let's say you're researching, you can move this little thing around here. So let's say I want to collect this image. Again, select Smart Select, highlight the photograph. Again, see as the text in here will provide me the link to that as well and see the date and time, that sort of thing. And then we can go ahead and collect it. So let's say we want some of this text as well. We can also just go up here to plus, highlight the text. Again, it sees the text right here, even provides a link for it. And we can go ahead and add it. So we're all done here, and you can see on the home screen this little floating icon. We can tap down here to see all the available clips I've made. And then when we're done here, I can go ahead and save it to my scrapbook. Now with Image Clip, we can just circle an image. For example, on this website here, it gives me a rough outline. I can use this to snap to the full picture. I can use this for a circular view, or I can use the magnetic outline to select just parts of the image and save it to my scrapbook. And then we have Screen Write, which does a little screen grab here, and we can start editing it as we want. Alternatively, on the Samsung phone, you just use a palm swipe to also grab the screen grab. You just don't get the editor here, but you can bring it up through the drop-down shade. Now let's take a look at our quick settings, which reveal some of the features built into the phone. So for example, we have all the standard stuff, Wi-Fi location. We have our sound controls, which are just quick toggles here. Bluetooth, screen rotation, lock. We also have mobile data, which we can turn off and on. But we also have Download Booster, a feature we're familiar with here, which you can toggle on and off. But basically, this allows the device to download from both your Wi-Fi and your cellular carrier to boost the speed of downloads, which actually works pretty well. Now we also have Ultra Power Saving Mode, which as you can see gives you an estimate of just how much battery life you save under Ultra Power Saving Mode. So you can see we estimate a standby time of 11.6 days with 93% of charge. So again, this is pretty much a limp home mode that dramatically dials back the features and performance of the phone in order to preserve the ability to make phone calls or messages. So there we go. We have a really dim grayscale screen with a limited selection of apps. So as you can see here, you can select from a very narrow selection. You can swipe down and see your notification panel and your settings panel, again, much simplified from the standard interface. Now, Ultra Power Saving Mode is pretty crippling, so there are plenty of other power saving options here. So if you want to get to this control panel, just tap and hold on it. It takes you to that control panel. If you turn this on, you can see there are lots of other options here, such as restricting background data, restricting performance, and if you tap on that, you can control exactly how that behaves as well. So you can see you can dial back CPU performance, the screen output, turn off the touch key lights, that sort of thing. And then you can also enable grayscale mode if you prefer. Now we also have familiar Samsung features here like Smart Stay, which will monitor for the presence of your eyes and prevent the screen from going to sleep if you're looking at it. But what's missing here is Smart Pause, which used to pause a video playback and resume it again with the presence of your eyes. So it looks like they've eliminated that feature entirely. Now I'm also not seeing that toolbox feature, which is also on the Galaxy S5 and some other Galaxy variants. So it looks like they've eliminated that for the Note series. But we do have a new feature here, which is Side Key Panel. So basically, these duplicate the functions of the controls on the bottom of the phone. When you tap the screen, it kind of hides for you, and when you need it again, it swipes out just with a gesture. Now you can reposition this just by tapping and holding this move icon and reposition it anywhere on the screen. Again, the idea here is to make this phone more one-handable so it's within thumb reach. So it's kind of nice. I really like this feature. So again, when you don't need it, it just hides. When you need it again, just swipe out. Now it behaves exactly the same. So if you tap and hold the home button, brings up Google Now. If you double tap, brings up S-Voice. If you tap the recent apps, brings up recent apps. Tap and hold, brings up your options or menu options. You can also tap and hold the back button to get to your multi-window mode, which I'll explore in just a moment here. Now we can also drag this up here to remove, to get rid of it, or we can take it up to edit to change some of the features. So for example, we can change the transparency. We can also disable quick minimize. So if you don't want that to disappear when you tap the screen, you can select this instead. And we can manage the keys, which is very interesting here. So with keys, you can add up to 4 keys to that panel here. So for example, if you want to reduce the screen, basically this is one-handed mode, you can add it. We also have an options button instead of long pressing the recent apps key, so you can drag and drop this up here to replace one of the buttons. And of course we have the app drawer as well. So let me just show you what reduce screen does. Now basically this is one-handed mode. When it does this, you can see it resizes the screen, and you can manually resize this to whatever size you want. Now you can also maximize it, and you can also drag and drop this to the left side. So if you want a left justified one-handed mode, again you hit one-handed mode and it's left justified. Now you can see that that key panel disappears, and instead you have your controls here on this panel like so. Now we can also increase touch sensitivity, so we can use this phone with gloved hands, which is particularly useful in cold climates like where I am. Now car mode simplifies the interface for driving conditions. So for example, we have basic controls for phone, messaging, navigation, and music, and all of it is controllable through voice. So you don't have to touch your phone at all. So you can say, "Hi Galaxy, navigate to the nearest gas station."
Getting directions to gas station.
Now this app will also help you record the location of your car. So for example, you can take a photograph, you can record your voice, like say level 3, section B, you can record that, and you can record the geolocation. Now multi-window mode has also been enhanced or updated for the Note 4. And as you can see, when you tap and hold the back button, it brings up the tray and it automatically disappears. No little tab or anything like that, just disappears. Now if you don't want this feature to accidentally activate, you can also select multi-window mode up here and turn it off entirely. So let's go and take a look at multi-window mode for this phone. Now you can do windowing here. In order to do that, all I have to do is tap on the icon, it brings up a window. Now you can open up to 5 windows at a time, so that's quite a few of them. So now I have 5 little windows I can move around here, and I can also resize them by dragging and dropping them. As you can see here, there are some limits in terms of how small you can make those apps. But when you press the home button, they completely minimize into these little badges which float around on the top. So for example, if you want to go back to a browser here, you can see they're floating around on the top, and of course you can move them around like so, and you can tap them to bring them forward. Now when you have one of these windows active, they're highlighted in blue. So for example, you can hit the back button to navigate through that window here. And of course you can tap in the URL bar and you can enter in your text. You bring up a keyboard and that sort of thing. So pretty standard stuff. You can also tap on this little icon here to maximize the screen, minimize it into that badge icon. You can tap on it again to bring it forward. And you can do other things like copy text and items from this window to post it in another video. And of course you can just close it. Now alternatively, you can bring up a side-by-side view. So just tap and hold on the icon, drag it to the screen, and let's go ahead and grab another item here, like so. And as you can see, these are still in the way, so let me go ahead and close them. But you can see that you can have up to 5 of these windows open while having 2 windows open side by side. So there we go, we can resize the window. You can see that the active window is highlighted in blue, and that allows us to use the Android keys at the bottom. So for example, if you want menu, just tap and hold on it. It takes you to the menu options in the Chrome browser. I can also tap that icon to maximize the window, shrink the window down. So if I want to shrink it down to the badge, like so, it'll do that. I can also swap between the top and bottom window, like so, or just close the window entirely. And I can also copy one item from one window to paste it in another window. Now you can also window apps just by swiping in from the upper right or left corner, and then you can reposition it and resize it as you want. So again, this works with all apps or all active apps, like so. Now not all apps can be minimized. So for example, this Instagram app does not respond to that gesture. Now we can also edit what appears in this little tray here. So you can see the available apps over here and all the apps that appear. So if you want to remove some, just drag and drop them to the side. You can also create a custom recipe. So for example, I have YouTube and Chrome open right now. So if I go to create, it automatically creates a recipe up here. So it automatically launches both windows side by side when I tap it. Now, as you can see here, we do not have recent apps within each window like we did with the Note 3. Now there are a few controls from multi-window mode to take a look at here. So we have that pop-up view shortcut, which again allows you to bring up that pop-up view just by swiping in from the corner. Again, that's only with compatible apps. So if you don't want that to activate, you can disable it. I do find I've accidentally or unintentionally activated it when I want to swipe down from the screen. Instead, it activates that pop-up view, which I don't want. So here is how you disable it. Now we also have open in multi-window view, which is off by default. So if you enable this and you're in an app that requires another app to open, instead of opening that app and replacing what you're looking at, instead it will bring up a pop-up view, which is kind of useful. So let's say you're in the browser and you see a YouTube link. When you tap on that, instead of completely replacing what you're looking at, you now get a window with YouTube. Now let's go ahead and set up our fingerprint scanner. Now I'm going to use S-Finder to find the fingerprint scanner under settings. So I'm just going to start typing in finger. So you can see finger scanner found right under settings, and we're going to go to fingerprint manager, click OK, and then we're going to train a finger. Now in my case, I prefer to side swipe my thumb because that's more of a natural grip here when you're using the phone. So let's go ahead and do that. Now the next step is to create a backup passcode in case the fingerprint scanner fails, and this time we need 6 characters. All right, so let's go ahead and swipe our finger to unlock. Now, private mode allows us to hide certain files, images, that sort of thing behind a passcode or a fingerprint scan. So if I swipe to enable private mode, I can now hide certain things. This only works within certain Samsung apps. So for example, the Gallery app, this works just fine. So if I go to this image here, if I go up to options, swipe down to move to private, this will hide the image. So this will only be available in private mode. So in order to activate private mode, you need to use a passcode or your fingerprint scan. So up here, I have a private folder. And if I want to hide that image from view, I just go to my drop-down shade here, turn off private mode, click OK, that folder disappears. And to regain access to it, just enable private mode, swipe your finger, try again, and it will come back. There you go. Now we also have Quick Connect from the drop-down shade, and this allows us to see devices nearby that we can control, broadcast media to, that sort of thing. So you'll see my AV receiver, so I can play content to it. I can see my printers. I can see my Samsung Smart TV. I can see my Chromecast. So if I tap on any one of these, I can perform a variety of actions based on the app selection. Now, one of my favorite aspects of TouchWiz is S-Finder, which is a really great search tool for your device as well as the web. So for example, you can bring up anything here from settings to apps to calendar appointments, that sort of thing, just by typing in here or speaking it. So for example, I can start typing in Android. So start searching right away so you can see Android appears under settings. We can see it under Chrome, My Files, under My Calendar, Office Suite, and a web search right below. I can also limit the search by time, so I can see last 30 days and that sort of thing. I can also use tags, GPS locations, and that sort of thing here. And I can select the type of content, so notes, conversations, help documents, images, music videos, and that sort of thing. Of course, we also have screen mirroring, so we can wirelessly broadcast the display and audio of this device to a compatible TV, like a Samsung Smart TV in my case. Works pretty well. Now we can also edit this notification panel, so you can see we have the active buttons, which are at the top here, and the available buttons. Now all the available buttons appear when you swipe down with that two-finger gesture, or you can just tap up here to get to that as well. So if you want them in that single row view, which appears when you do that single gesture here and swipe left and right. So if you want more buttons to appear or different buttons to appear, basically just drag and drop them like so. Now you're limited up here to how many you can have, so you have to pick and choose. And we have blocking mode, which is a do not disturb feature with lots of options, so you can adjust exactly what you want to happen, and you can select specific times of day for this to automatically kick in. So under the app drawer, you'll find the standard selection of Samsung and Google apps, along with some third-party apps that includes things like Dropbox, Evernote, and Flipboard. Now we also have a smart remote control app, which allows us to control our AV equipment, like our TVs, our cable boxes, and that sort of thing, and it takes you through the setup process for your region. We'll also find this Pen.up app, which is basically an app geared toward people who want to use the stylus for art and share it with this specific social network. So to drag and drop from the app drawer, pretty basic. Just tap and hold on it. Takes you to the home screen automatically, so you can drag and drop it to one of these home screens. You can also take it up here to disable. You can go up to app info or create a folder or just cancel this. If you go up to app info, you'll see your updates, how much RAM it's taking up, that sort of thing. You can also force stop it. Now you can folder items within the app drawer. You just have to go up to edit or create folder. So if we create a folder here, let's just call it Google. So now I have a Google folder, and it no longer adds to a separate page just for foldered items, and I can add apps. I can either select them or just drag and drop them. So for example, I see all these Google apps up here, just select them all. Now you can drag and drop this folder to the home screen and that sort of thing. It doesn't look like you can change the color of the folder like you used to be able to. Now if you create a folder, you get a remove folder option like so, and basically it will restore the layout to the existing layout before you foldered everything. Now we can also go up to edit here, which allows us to drag and drop within the app drawer. And as you can see, you get all those options up here for uninstall, app info, create page, or create folder. Now you can also sort them by custom order, so the order you selected, or the alphabetical order, which will take folder items out of their folders. Now we can also see all of our downloaded apps, and you can uninstall those apps if you want. Now you can also uninstall or disable apps, at least the ones that are eligible for that. So for example, you can see I can uninstall the Messenger app here, so I can disable it. It looks like I can't uninstall it, but there are some apps you can uninstall, such as Office Suite here, which I downloaded, so I can uninstall it and it disappears. Now if you disable an app like so, it will actually appear under disabled apps. So we can show disabled apps like so. And if you can't uninstall or disable apps, you can actually hide apps, and you can hide as many as you want. And again, you have a separate folder for hidden apps if you want to see those again. Now the settings panel has also been redesigned, again, much more organized, a lighter background color. So you can see we have things organized by connections, device, personalization, system, and applications. You can also search this instead of having to poke through all of them. So you can search for example, if you want fingerprint, just start typing in and it finds it right away. But you can also customize these quick settings so you can add certain shortcuts right to the front of that list if you prefer. You can also change your view up here so you can see as a tab view, which is kind of a traditional view, connections, device, etc. Now you have a lot of options with S Pen. You can disable Air Command, Air View, the pointer, or Direct Pen Input. Direct Pen Input basically refers to that pop-up that appears when you hover the tip of the pen over a text box, such as a URL bar. Now you can also turn off pen detection, so it's always aware of the presence of the S Pen, even if it's detached. So if you walk too far away from it, you'll get a little warning. Now it's pretty clever how this activates. So for example, if I've detached the pen, lock the screen, and I place it in my pocket, as soon as I place it in my pocket, it gives me this little warning. You also have detachment options. So Air Command is there by default, but you also have Action Memo or No Action if you prefer. So under connections, pretty basic stuff: Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, NFC, airplane mode, data usage, your location information, NFC sharing, and mobile network setup. We also have our sound options. This is where you can turn off those annoying touch sounds that Samsung has always included with TouchWiz. If you don't want to hear that blooping sound, there you go. You can also turn off haptic feedback if you prefer. We also have display and wallpaper. Under display, you can control your brightness, your wallpapers, your fonts, and you can enable one-handed operation. So you can reduce the screen size just by swiping in either from the left-hand or right-hand edge. You can also use one-handed input for certain keyboards like calculators, the phone dialer, and that sort of thing. We can also use that side key panel, so we can turn that on. Again, that's a quick setting up here if we want. So to activate one-handed operation, just double swipe from the edge. So if you swipe in from the right edge, you get right justified, same with the left edge. So if you remember at the start of this video, I talked about the lock screen, which had the weather information and pedometer, and this is where you can disable that information or add additional information such as help text, owner information, dual clock, and you can change the clock size as well. You can also change all the unlock effects. So you can see this is the one they come with, but there are certainly many others. We also have motions and gestures. Now direct call is great. This has been around for quite a while. So if you're looking at a contact or if you're looking at a text message, in order to call them, all you have to do is raise the phone to your ear, automatically dials it for you. Smart Alert will basically give you a little vibration if you pick up the phone and you have a pending notification. Mute pause, you can activate by placing your hand over the screen or flipping the phone over. We also have palm swipe to capture, which again is that screen grab feature. We also have easy mode, and they actually prompt you to select whether you want standard mode or easy mode when you set up the phone for the first time. But easy mode is basically the grandma mode. It simplifies the interface. So there we go. We have bolder, bigger icons with all the major icons placed on the surface with a flashlight, a magnifier, that sort of thing, which uses the camera. And of course, you can also add additional apps. Again, the interface is much simpler. You can see more apps here as well. And you can see we can also quickly add contacts from our contacts book. So instead of having to search for your contacts list, you just tap them here to call them. Now they've done a lot with the keyboard. So you can see up top we have our toolbar, which has lots of options. They're no longer buried behind a settings button on the lower part of the keyboard. You can also see your symbols here, and you can snap back here. Now if you tap settings, you get to all of these options, which you can quickly toggle on and off. You can also enable keyboard swipe for continuous input like so. You can also jump to more settings to find lots and lots of other options. Now you can go up here for your clipboard, so you can see everything you've added to your clipboard. You can see the various keyboards you have available to you, such as the standard QWERTY English keyboard, a 3x4 keyboard, full handwriting keyboard, and then we have box handwriting keyboard. So with handwriting, you can just use your finger. Of course, you can also just use the stylus. We also have voice input. This is a test of voice input, period. We have a smiley keyboard or emoticon keyboard and lots of options to pick from here as well. We also have a selection keyboard, so we can select text, cut, copy, paste, a directional keypad, and that sort of thing. We also have our floating keyboard here, so if you want a floating keyboard that you can detach and place anywhere, you have that option as well. And then we have our styles, so we can go with a black theme or white theme. White theme is here by default. So the camera app is very familiar to other Samsung devices. Just tap anywhere on the scene to adjust exposure and focus. And with phase detection autofocus, it's pretty quick. You can snap your photograph, you can pinch in and out. You can tap and hold on the shutter release to take a burst shot, like so. You can also lock exposure and focus, just tap anywhere on the scene to lock it in. Tap anywhere to release it. You can record video, which also has pinch in and out to zoom. It also has HDR. You can pause it, resume it, and snap a photo while recording video. We also have our quick settings right here and more settings if we go up here. Lots of settings, so we can adjust our video size from HD to QHD or ultra high definition. Let's click OK here. So, of course, we still have optical image stabilization, but some features are turned off with 4K. Now, in addition to optical image stabilization, we do have video stabilization, which doesn't work with 4K, but if you go to Full HD, you can see that's now available. And again, you do have HDR. And if you want any of these settings in here, just drag and drop them to your control panel. Now, we also have voice control here, so if we activate it, we can say, cheese, record video. Now we also have our mode selections, and you can see it's been slimmed down quite a bit because you can manage your own modes or download new ones. So you can see rear cam selfie is a new one. We have selective autofocus, which blurs the background to focus on the foreground subject. Again, it's kind of mimicking the effect of a DSLR panorama and that sort of thing. Now if we go to manage modes, you can see what also is available on this device but is unchecked. So you can see beauty face, shot, and more. You also have dual camera mode and virtual tour. Dual camera mode records both a front-facing and rear-facing camera at the same time. So if you want to add that, just check it, and you can see we now have it. So let's select dual camera mode. Now the glue effect is really interesting here. So I can select something in the background to stick the rear-facing camera image. So automatically finds it, so found my display here. So as I move my camera around, you can see that the rear-facing camera now stays stuck there. So it's kind of an interesting effect. Now the rear cam selfie is a new mode which basically allows you to use the rear facing camera. Of course you can't see yourself when you're taking that photograph, so it automatically snaps the photo when it detects your face. Now the front facing camera has a new trick thanks to the heart rate monitor on the back. So if it detects your face, all you have to do is tap the heart rate monitor on the back to act as your shutter release. Of course you could also say cheese and you get a little countdown and it'll take this picture for you. Now we also have this wide selfie mode, so if you want to take a photo, shoot. Basically you just swing the camera left to right and it stitches it all together for you. Alright guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a look at that 3.7 megapixel front-facing camera, good for 1080p at 30 frames per second. Now the thing I really notice about this camera is just how much wider angle that lens is. So you can see I'm holding it out at about arm's length and it gets a lot more space than you would normally expect from a front-facing camera, which tends to also distort the subject. So there's less distortion here. They're doing a really good job with this camera. Also does a fairly good job exposing the scene without jumping around. As you can see, I have bright lights behind me. So it's doing a pretty good job focusing on the subject. It does have face detection and stuff like that. So it seems to do a pretty good job overall. And audio pickup is good. Now with that quick autofocus, pictures come out sharp with just the right amount of saturation, the correct white balance and exposure. The auto mode does a pretty good job and is pretty foolproof. Now, it doesn't have the best low light performance until it hits the processing engine. Once it hits the processing, the images come out pretty nice. Now, it does soften them quite a bit, and you can see some artifacting and some processing going on in the darker areas of the photo, but the results are definitely impressive and better than most cameras you'll find today. All this hardware stabilization, focusing, and processing also means you get fantastic HDR images. Now, the LED flash does a pretty decent job. It's nice and bright, and I think the processing behind it compensates for the fact that we don't have a dual tone flash in this camera. Now the Note 4 I'm using has the Exynos octa-core processor. And as you can see here, the multi-core score is just off the charts. Definitely bests the iPhone's multi-core score. But you can see the iPhone 6 bests the single-core score here by a pretty significant margin. Now compared to the Note 3, you can see huge gains have been made in the single-core score, although the Note 3 I have here is the Snapdragon, not the octa-core processor. So this is a quad-core versus an 8-core. So different technologies here, but performance is fairly close. Obviously, the multi-core score is much improved, and the single-core score is also improved. So what about that notorious TouchWiz lag? Well, I think throughout the course of this video, you'll see that this phone is smooth and quick. So I think Samsung has done a good job optimizing the latest version of TouchWiz with Android 4.4.4. So it's a smooth performer. You also have that high-end internal specs, which keeps up with the software demands of this phone. They've also scaled back some of the features from previous Note devices and improved the interface design. Now, in terms of battery life, after about 7 hours and 46 minutes, my screen on time was a little over 4 hours. That's at maximum brightness. I think that's pretty decent, certainly nothing great. So definitely the biggest selling point of the new Note 4 is that display. Again, this is that Super AMOLED technology now with QHD resolution with a stunning 515 pixels per inch. So text looks pin sharp. Certainly far more resolution than you need for your eye, but you can definitely tell the difference if you jump between this and a 1080p display. But the resolution gives you really sharp images and video, and of course the display uses that Super AMOLED technology, which is an emissive technology, meaning that if you have dark pixels, the pixels are not lit. So you get absolute blacks with deep contrast, so everything really pops on the display. And then you have those vivid colors. Now it's not oversaturated, and as I said, DisplayMate considers this the best mobile display on the phone right now. The only drawback with these panels is that they're not as bright as an LCD panel, so they're not as viewable outside, although this panel does a fairly decent job. The other standout feature here is the camera. So again, 16 megapixels, that's a lot of resolution with optical image stabilization, which does make a big impact. We also get 4K video recording with optical image stabilization, which also dramatically improves the result without having to use a tripod. So a handheld 4K is not as bad as it was with the Galaxy S5 or the Note 3 from last year. Also, it's really quick and accurate autofocus with continuous autofocus on video, which is pretty smooth and seamless. So in the end, with a stunning display, fantastic cameras, improved design and build quality, with excellent battery life and performance, with unique software features that make this even more useful than before, the Note 4 is definitely one of the flagships of 2014. So that's going to do for me in this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.